changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more, no more complaining. People, their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more, no more.
Well, today is not the big day. Tomorrow is the big day. It is the 20-year anniversary, of course, of the attack on 9/11. And so I wanted to take a moment and to pause and to be with you all and to just talk about it, to be honest. You're welcome to make a comment in the comment box. Where were you? What were you doing? What's your memory from that? Your fear, your regret, etc. I was in my first year of ministerial school at Unity Village, Missouri, and we had gathered together for prayer class, and it was an interesting day because unlike all the other days where just like in any sort of a college or high school or whatever, where you go from, I'm sorry, Teddy is licking his foot underneath my desk and it's distracting me. We were playing on the beach this morning. Unlike any other day, they had brought in both classes, the second year students and the first year students. And no, I take that back. The second year students were not there. What they had done was they invited all of the instructors from the seminary, I guess you would call it, ministerial school, to come in, and we were going to discuss the power of prayer and the importance of prayer. So think about that. That was what was going on for me, that we had just gathered and the prayer teacher, the head of the prayer department, yes, we had a prayer department, began to introduce everybody and remind everybody why we were there, and we were going to take a really deep look at the power and the effectiveness of prayer. And as you all know, probably before we all had poured coffee out of our thermoses and begun to talk, the vice president of the school came in and said that what we all know has happened has happened. And to her credit, the head of the prayer department, as I remember, said for everyone to pray. Bow your head and pray. And all of the instructors walked out of the room to try and get more information and figure out what was going on. So now most of us, I'd say the average age in the class was 50. So, we were all adults sitting in this room. And we sat there, and all of these emotions went through my mind. We had no idea who did it at that time. Remember, it took a very long time, or quite a while, for us to figure out who was at the source of the attack. So we really had no idea. And at this point, actually, only the first plane had hit the tower. But sitting there, I remembered something that's done at the end of every Unity service that I know of. I actually changed it in my church, which really upset a lot of people, is to sing the peace song. Let there be peace on earth. And so sitting there with all of my fellow students and deathly silent, I began to sing that full voice. And everybody joined in. One by one by one. And the power in that for me, and especially because in that moment we were all angry. Anger means in a lot of cases vengeance in people's minds. And everybody, even us, went to, oh my gosh, but at the same time we were studying about how our consciousness not only impacts, but is the consciousness of the world. And the way that song concludes with, let there be peace on earth, and what? How does it conclude? That's right. Let it begin with me. Let it begin with me. The United States, the world ascertained what happened. The United States sought vengeance. 20 years later, I don't know. I was listening this morning to a podcast, and I want to recommend it to you. It's The Daily. It's the New York Times daily podcast. It's called The Daily. And I was listening to it this morning. And the interesting thing was right after 9/11, and I mean right after 9/11, conspiracy theories began to spring up. And conspiracy theories that this didn't happen or that didn't happen or who was actually behind it. And it was the Bush administration, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember watching a video about this back then, a DVD. And I was listening to one of the makers of a DVD who was seen. It's the biggest seen, most seen DVD of all time. But anyway, it calls into question what happened, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess where I'm going with all of this is the truth. And today, this guy, knows that what he was presenting was intended to shock, stimulate, and activate people and upset them. Because as I've shared many times, one of the 5 reasons people gripe is power. And the best way to have power is to enrage other people, to enrage and engage them. So I would hope that what we would take away from this, or those of us who are here in this JumpStart community, is that when we allow ourselves to become enraged about anything, we lose our capacity to be reasonable and to be reasoned and to be the higher versions of ourselves that we aspire to be. It's not easy sometimes. It's not easy sometimes. The rest of 9/11 for me that day was actually one of the most precious days I can remember, because there was a guy in my class named Lance. Lance was very comfortable in being a gay man in a predominantly straight world. And he would occasionally remind the teacher that it was time to stop class so everyone could moisturize. And I would do it too. After the second tower fell, I just couldn't sit there and watch it over and over and over again on TV, because remember, that's what they did for days. And so I invited Lance to take a walk, and there's a labyrinth at Unity Village, a full-size labyrinth that you can walk. It's I think a quarter of a mile, but it only takes up like a small portion of a parking lot, a large parking lot. And the idea is to establish something that you want to let go of. And in that moment, it was anger. I was so angry about what had happened. And so I decided to do that. And then the idea is you focus on it as you go inside the labyrinth. And then when you're in there, you take a moment to release it and you come out. And I would have to say that over the years, my anger over what happened has diminished considerably. My understanding has increased significantly. And that if there's ever going to be peace on earth, it has to begin with me. The first way any country gets its populace to go to war is to disrupt the populace's own inner peace. Now, that's not to say something external cannot happen. And I'm not saying that what happened in this case was not justifiable. What I'm saying is that the people have to become at war in their hearts for war to happen. And so if we want to get rid of war, if we want to get rid of terrorism, one of the first places and the only place that we need to start is within our own hearts. To eliminate conflict in our minds with others and in our minds and in our hearts with ourselves. I know today's Jumpstart has been a bit rambling. I know it's been a bit long pausey. How's that? And at the same time, that was a day that changed everyone in the world. And we are still feeling its effects, and will continue to. I've been to the Holocaust Museum in D.C. I went to D.C. one time and ended up spending 3 days there after it opened. And at the end, it has a flame that just says, so we can never forget. Let's always remember this, but let's continue to heal from it. And to know that the healing can happen. And it starts with us. I look forward to hearing your comments. So take a moment and share your comments and share today's Jumpstart if you feel guided to let other people know that you found some comfort in this. I guess you can tell I'm feeling this, huh? I'm not my usual upbeat morning self. Oh, I didn't close the loop on the story with Lance. Lance and I took a walk on the Labyrinth, and a couple of years later, Lance was riding his bicycle and was going through traffic and just was not paying attention. He was wearing a helmet, and no, he was not. Anyway, and there was a truck there that had a rear side view mirror. Lance hit it, fell over backwards, and hit his head and later died. And so that day at the Labyrinth was one of the last chances I had to spend with a guy who was a really good friend of mine. There was about 5 of us that just were always together.
No more complaining people. Their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more complaining people. Their lives are changing. We're flying high.